When most people hear the words child abuse, when they hear that CPS took a kid, there's an image that comes to mind, and I know what it is. You know what it is. It's the worst thing you can imagine happening to a child. And those cases exist, sadly, and I am not here to tell you that they do not. But I am here to tell you that image, that worst case scenario image, it's doing a lot of work. And the people who run this system, they know it. I'm an educator, a counselor. I have been a state-mandated reporter, which means if I see signs of abuse or neglect, I'm legally required to report it. And I've made those calls. But I'm going to share with you something that has taken me years to fully sit with. The word neglect and the word abuse, they live in the same sentence in every statistic, every news story, every policy conversation. Like they're the same thing. They are not the same thing. And that confusion, it's not an accident. Here's what the data actually says. Of all the children removed from their homes and placed in foster care in the United States, 55% are there because of neglect, not abuse, neglect. Physical abuse, 13%, sexual abuse, even lower. In California, one study found 87% of first-time removals were for neglect. 87%. So when you picture what CPS is, when you picture why children are being removed, your brain is running that 13% scenario almost every time. But the system is built on the 87% scenario. And those are completely different scenarios. I mean, completely different conversations. Now, let me tell you what neglect actually looks like in the cases I've personally seen in the schools where I've worked. It looks like a kid who came to school without eating breakfast because there wasn't food in the house. Not because their parent doesn't love them, but because their parents working 2 jobs and the money ran out 2 days before payday. It looks like a 12-year-old watching a 6-year-old because there's no childcare and mom's at work. It looks like an apartment with the heat shut off in March, or a parent so deep in untreated depression they can hardly get out of bed. But they love their kids fiercely. And the lights are off, and dinner just isn't happening tonight. That is the majority of what CPS is responding to. And here's the brutal truth. Poverty and neglect, they're not the same thing. But in the eyes of the system, they're treated like they are. And once that report is made, once that call is placed, once the machinery starts, it doesn't ask whether what this family needs is rent assistance or a support worker or treatment. It asks whether the child should be removed. Here's where it gets structural, because this isn't just a training problem or a funding problem. There's an incentive problem that runs through the whole damn thing. See, the federal government reimburses states for a percentage of every child in foster care. It's called Title IV funding. It's been around since 1980, and it's what's called an open-ended entitlement. It means there's no cap. The more children in the system, the more money flows. Now, I'm not saying caseworkers are kicked back at their desks, calculating dollar amounts and the number of kids. Most of the caseworkers that I've encountered went into this work because they truly do care. But the system they work inside, the contracts, the agencies, the funding structures, well, those were built in a way that doesn't financially reward keeping families together. It rewards separation. It rewards placement. And in some states that have privatized foster care, Kansas, Texas, Florida, there are others, private companies literally get paid per month per child. And they stop getting paid the month that child goes home. Now think about that incentive structure for a second. And here's something that should have been a much, much bigger story, but wasn't. In 2020, remember 2020 folks? Reports of child abuse dropped significantly across the country. The system pointed to the numbers and some people said, hey, things are getting better. But researchers took a look at the why behind the numbers, and the answer was the numbers dropped because schools were closed. Teachers, counselors, coaches, the mandated reporters, the people like me who are inside children's lives every day, we weren't seeing the kids, so we weren't reporting. The abuse didn't go down. Our visibility of the kids went down. And that tells you something profound about how this whole system actually works. It doesn't try to find harm. It finds harm that gets reported. And who reports depends entirely on who has access to children, which means that this system sees what the institutions see and miss everything else. So let me come back to where I started. That image, the worst case scenario image. It serves a function. Because when the public imagines what CPS is doing, they imagine monsters being stopped. They don't imagine a single mom losing her kids because her electricity was shut off for a month. They don't imagine a family that really needs a social worker getting a court date instead. And because the public imagines monsters, there's no need to ask hard questions. They don't ask who profits. They don't ask why the number of kids in the system goes up, yet the services for the families went down. They don't ask why a state can announce a 60% drop in child deaths and not mention that they changed the definition of what counts as a child's death. That's not an accident. It's architecture. And the architecture of this system deserves a much harder look than it's getting. I'm not here to tell you the system is evil or that every removal is wrong or that people working inside it don't care. A lot of them do. What I am here to tell you is that the story you've been handed about this system, it's incomplete. And incomplete stories, they have real consequences for real kids and real families. That's why this conversation matters. And we're just getting started.